Are you ready for the second chapter of A Drop of Mercy by Becky McGurrin? This is not a very long chapter, so if you want to go back and review chapter 1 before you start this one, go ahead, and then I'll read you this chapter, and next week you can get chapter 3. We've left Heinrich. He took some butter and flour up to the hungry people in Philadelphia and ran into some militia at the time. We see that there's a bit of tension going on between the German people, the German immigrants that live in Germantown, the English immigrants, and the people who consider themselves Americans. There's British around. This is the Revolutionary War, so we've got a few groups of people that are there. And so let's pick up in chapter 2. Heinrich set the half-finished hemlock broom on the balcony floor beside his stool, carefully tucked his old knife into his pocket, and stretched his fingers. He stared at yet another troop of soldiers passed along the road beneath him. British, this time. Must be looking for the Continentals who had run by this morning. You'd think they'd find each other better if they'd all just sit still a while. He imagined the two armies meeting on the hills just north of the town. What a terrible thing it must be to be in a battle. Then he looked at his family, sitting on the front balcony with him in the last light of the evening. How terrible it must be for the people caught in between. They burned Ben Kaiser's place to the ground last night, Dottie said. Took down the barn and everything. Even destroyed 2 good acres of buckwheat. Heinrich shook his head in disgust. Now what's the sense of that? It does make me think, his father said, that we might want to bring in most of the stores. Squeeze as much as we can into the cellar and put the rest in the cave behind the barn. That old hidey hole? Seems they could find that as easy as the barn, Mom said. Perhaps. Dottie vacantly stared over the houses across the road for a bit. Eleonora, how many casks of cider do we have left? 10, maybe 12. And eggs? A few. His father stroked his beard and thought some more. He turned to Heinrich. How's the flax? It'll be a few more weeks if the dew keeps up, Heinrich said. All right then, Nellie, as soon as the sun set, you go gather all the eggs you can and a crate or 2 of the prettiest apples. Heinrich, I want you to bundle up the overstock of fabric. Clear the shelves. We can make more when the flax comes in. You boys think you can handle a trip to the market tomorrow? Not into Philadelphia again, Mom protested. No, just down to the square. And don't take any of that paper money from neither side. If they won't give you coins, trade for something we can use. Empty casks, maybe. Or leather, if they have any. In fact, see if anyone's got any sugar. Your mom has not had tea with sugar in it in ever so long. He winked at his wife. We don't want you losing your sweetness. She smiled in return. Does this mean you'll fix my kitchen roof? What? Is it still smelling wet? I told you the wall was beginning to swell. Don't you remember? Yes, the roof. I remember. I'll get to it as soon as I move some hedges over and hide the cave entrance. Heinrich wondered why, with all the requisitioning going on, folks would still bring their goods into town. Then again, farmers needed to sell their products somewhere, and Philadelphia was even riskier than Germantown, not to mention it being a full 6 miles farther south. Heinrich pushed the larger wheelbarrow stacked with casks of cider toward the market square. Klaus followed with the smaller one, containing yarn, fabric, apples, and eggs. Do you think Dottie will finish hiding the cave by the time we get back? Klaus asked between breaths. Shh, admonished Heinrich. It's no good hiding something if you're going to tell everyone where it is. Klaus winced. There's Justinia. Hello, Justinia, you going to market? Justinia crossed the street to speak with them. If I were, I'd be headed in the wrong direction. I'm making my bread rounds. Klaus tilted his head like a curious puppy. Bread rounds? Heinrich nodded. Yeah, while everyone else takes their things to market to sell on Fridays, Justinia takes hers to the poor and gives it away for free. Justinia blushed. It's just a bit of bread. That you got up before the sun to bake for everyone else, Heinrich added. Go on with you, she said in dismissal. And what brings you two out so early with your push carts? We're going to market, Klaus said, selling off stuff before the soldiers get it. Oh, are you now? And will you be buying anything? Tea and sugar for Mom. She'll like that. So, asked Heinrich, how do you pick who to give your bread to? It's not hard to find hungry bellies these days. But how do you know if you're giving it to the right people? What if someone else deserves it more? None of us deserves it. But mercy gives to them as don't deserve it. That's who I look for most. Are you serious? Heinrich asked. I am. You're a mystery, Justinia. I'm that too. Now I must be off before this bread toughens in my bag. I wish you well on your trading. Horses, people, and wagons of every description crowded the market square. Heinrich and Klaus spread their wares upon the grass at the northeast corner of the square beside a group of Indians selling baskets and furs and performing acrobatics for the children. Klaus was enthralled. Heinrich feigned indifference by hawking to customers in the other direction. There was neither flour nor tea to be had for any money, but Heinrich did trade a bit of linen for some sugar cones. He was just packing up to head to the shops in search of tea when the express rider from Philadelphia stopped to update them on the news. The armies of General Howe and Washington clashed at Chad's Ford yesterday. Fighting was fierce and lasted for 11 hours. Over 1,000 killed or wounded. Washington has retreated. The British are within 20 miles of Philadelphia, and Congress has fled the city. The British are advancing this way. Prepare for war. Only 20 miles, Heinrich said in dismay. That's but a day's walk. Aye, said the man. Looks like we're about to see trouble up close. Did you hear they arrested Benjamin Chew yesterday? And Henry Drinker and John Penn with him on account of their being Quakers and not swearing the Assembly's oath of allegiance. Guess liberty's only for them as does what other men tells them to do. And that ends chapter 2. Tune in again for chapter 3.